Good evening, everyone. I, Meenu Chopra, welcome you to the third episode of Decoding NEP 2020, brought to you by Edudevs, School of Inspired Teaching and Learning, in association with Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham University. It is a truism that change is the only constant, and principals who successfully lead their schools will inevitably lead them through periods of change. It is the principal's job to inspire and support change so that the school can move from where it is to where it needs to be, to ensure the best outcomes for all its students, strengthen the professional practice of faculty and staff, and improve the school culture for all stakeholders. Principals play a crucial role in guiding schools through the process and do this by serving as both leaders of change, as vision developers, and people motivators. Evolving nature of the school environment has put greater and newer demands on the school leaders from being administrators to innovators. The shift from school effectiveness to school improvement has further enhanced the role of both the principals and teachers. As we look ahead into the 21st century, leaders will be those who empower others. And today, we take forward the discussion with Re-Conceptualizing School Leadership as our theme. The panelists for today's discussion are illustrious luminaries from the field of education. Our first panelist, Mrs. Irina Mukherjee, completed her Bachelor of Science in Mathematics from Delhi University. She pursued higher studies and earned a master's degree in applied mathematics from the University of Texas at Austin. She served at Modern School Vasant Vihar for 22 years, gaining rich experience in administration and innovative pedagogy. She then moved on to take leadership roles at GD Goenka School as senior school in charge and later at Richmond Global School, New Delhi as vice principal. Mrs. Mukherjee took headship at Summerfield School in May 2018. Mrs. Mukherjee is a passionate, student-focused, and a forward-thinking school leader. She's equipped with the 21st century leadership skills. It is her innovative thinking and creative leadership that has helped prepare her students for the challenges of a changing world. At Summerfield School, she seeks to empower and prepare a new community of thinkers, creators, and doers ready to make a positive difference to society. We welcome you, Mrs. Mukherjee. Our second panelist.
Thank you, Meenu.
Thank you, ma'am. Our pleasure. Our second panelist, Mrs. Chalesh Bhandari, is the Vice Principal at Ambience Public School, Saftajung Enclave. Her career has been a rich and rewarding journey of 35 years. An alumnus of University of Delhi, Ms. Bhandari holds a degree in science and is a postgraduate in English. She started her teaching career at Holy Child School, teaching mathematics. Subsequently, she moved to Delhi Public School, Arkepuram, where she gained valuable administrative experience. She went on to become the vice principal at Ambience, a position that she continues to hold. She believes that every educator must have an honest respect for the uniqueness and ability of every individual to learn and stands committed to the best practices and strategies. She has conducted the innovative and first of its kind pilot ECHO Ambience mentorship program in mathematics for teachers from all across the country. She has led the Mindfulness in Education program in her school. We welcome you, Mrs. Bhandari. Our third panelist, Dr. P. Shankar, is presently principal at Amrita School of Engineering, Chennai campus of Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham. He is a prolific researcher come teacher with national and international credentials. He has served as Senior Scientific Officer at the Indira Gandhi Center for Atomic Research for 19 years before shifting to a full-time position in educational institutions since 2008. He has served as adjunct visiting faculty at University of Arkansas during 2012-2016. He has over 80 publications in referred journals and at least another 60 presentations in conferences. He has 2 patents and is the co-author of 3 books. His passion for education and to motivate students has been the driving force for him to take up full-time responsibility as academic administrator, giving up a coveted post at Atomic Energy. In the last 12 years, he has been instrumental in introducing innovative changes in regulations to make the students industry-ready and globally competitive. His vision is to implement new strategies and directions in higher education to strengthen the intellectual capacity of our nation. We welcome you, Dr. Shankar. The moderator for today's session is Mrs. Devyani Kapoor, who needs no introduction. Mrs. Kapoor is an educator, an author, and a thought leader. She is the founder and CEO of Edudevs, the School of Inspired Teaching and Learning. An ex-principal, she carries over 30 years of experience with her in education sector and has worked with key brands in the educational industry. She is credited with introduction of a number of innovative pedagogical techniques for effective classroom management, quality circle time, lesson planning, experiential learning, and student empowerment techniques. No one can remain unaffected by her effusive charm. She has always believed in becoming a good mentor and guide to her students so that they learn the skills to adapt to any situation and be future ready. Welcome, Mrs. Kapoor, and request you to please take over the stage.
Thank you, Meenu ma'am. That was very kind and a lovely introduction for all the panelists. Thank you so much. I heartily welcome all our esteemed panelists to today's episode on Re-Conceptualizing School Leadership. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Good quality education, you see, is one of the necessary ingredients of the process of nation building, which converts human resource into an asset. There has never been more emphasis on quality education as it is in the last 10 years or so. And we see the outcome is the conceptualization and formulation of a very, very robust document, which is in the form of the National Education Policy 2020. Now, way back, CBSE issued a circular in 2019 titled Principals as Pedagogical Leaders, which became quite a talk in the educational circles, and which also formed the basis of another document and development of pedagogical leadership framework, which emphasizes leading learning, which simply means that principals and school leadership need to collaboratively work with the various stakeholders in education and consciously shift to learning as a part of school's culture and school's ethos. Everybody should be learning. Everyone should be evolving. Now, coming to a school leader is directly responsible for leading learning by creating a conducive environment, by empowering the teachers who can translate his vision into a broader vision of the school by and large. So my first question, which happens also to be the ice-breaking question, it is the same question and it will be addressed in the order of first to Ms. Irina Mukherjee, then to Dr. P. Shankar, and then Ms. Chalesh Bhandari. So the one common question which I actually need to be addressed by all of you who are in the administrative positions is that we see that the evolving nature of the school environment has put a greater and newer demands on the school leaders. So principals from being administrators and policy makers have become think tanks, have become thought leaders from handling just the school operations, management, finance, departmental regulations, state mandates, etc. These skills are required, but then they are not sufficient. What is required is that they need to get into a newer role of leading learning. I would request each one of you to please throw some light on what impact can school leadership have on learning and how is it possible. So first over to you, Ms. Irina Mukherjee.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Kapoor. There are no second thoughts that school leadership does matter. In fact, there is evidence to prove that leaders directly or indirectly promote improvement by using transformational or instructional strategies. So what is transformational and instructional strategy? Transformational strategy would be more about the vision, mission, and the aim of the institution, about setting directions and enhancing qualities. On the other hand, the instructional strategies have more to do with establishing clear goals, planning the curriculum, and evaluating teachers to enhance the quality of classroom teaching. The process of this, the impact of school leadership on learning, this might be slow. However, over time, the impact is evident. We all know that over the last 20 years, there have been efforts to improve the standards of achievement of students through various school reforms, not only here in India, but also worldwide. And this has culminated in the profile change of school leaders. International research has provided evidence that there is a direct and positive correlation between the leadership and quality of teaching, learning, and achievements of students. Creating a positive school climate, continuous professional development of staff, and promoting leadership in turn promotes student motivation, engagement, and achievement. Studies have shown that when leaders promote values such as integrity, compassion, fairness, it has direct impact on the students' academic outcomes. So I would conclude by saying that the necessary synergy provided by the school leadership is vital for student learning. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Irina ma'am. I think that is so well put that, all these areas and spheres of day-to-day, apart from day-to-day administration, various areas where the school leader has a direct impact on. And over to you, Dr. P. Shankar. And I would just want to draw attention of everyone that the kind of statistics we have 1.5 million schools across the country, 15 lakh principals and 45 lakh teachers. So this whole shift, and they are the stakeholders in bringing a change in the education system. So Dr. Shankar, I would like you to also throw light on how well this change can be incorporated with such a humongous structure. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mrs. Devan. There's little doubt that teachers have always been the backbone to building any nation. But NEP 2020, I would say, is a much more bold and visionary expression and lays a very clear pathway to realize the larger vision of a country like ours, to become a self-reliant India, to become a skilled India, to take up global leaderships by nurturing the right human resource potential. And therefore, every teacher has a huge role and responsibility in this nation-building exercise. I just make a small point here. If you look at the Global Innovation Index, which is perhaps one of the parameters of interest to us, India as a country, we stand somewhere around 48. We have gone up a few numbers in the last few years, but that's not, I would say, the right position for a country with a very high intellect quotient like India. So what is essential is a sweeping change in the pedagogy to involve the students in a participatory learning, in an experiential learning, in a research-based learning, to ensure that the intellectual capacity of our country is convoluted with the creative minds. We create a platform to allow them to express their creativity, and which would perhaps result in our global ranking on innovation and entrepreneurship, though orders higher. That's just one of the several aspects. As a country, we have to ensure that we retain the position as cultural capital in the world, to retain those ethical and high values for humanity. These are things that the whole world over, they've been looking to India for ages, and it's time that we retain those positions. And that's the only way possible to attain this, is through a participatory involvement in this national mission through NEP 2020. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Very well said. I think that is such a brilliant perspective that we don't need to just look at it pan-India. We need to actually map our growth with the global growth. And I'm sure the concept of participatory learning, experiential learning, of course, the experiential learning has become a buzz in the industry now, but it is very important to have a participatory pedagogical approach that everybody contributes. Very well. Thank you, sir, so much for your words. Over to you, Ms. Bhandari. For the same, we would like to have a perspective from you too. Yes, ma'am.
So I speak from the position of a grassroots teacher, a classroom teacher for the longest period of time. All right. And through my years, what I have noticed is that, first of all, I'm so happy that NEP is actually now positioning the teacher as the principal or the school leader as somebody who will put forth a vision, who will put forth a strategy, who will work not just on in sustaining a school, but in improving a school. That the school principal will be the innovator. See, all these years, the school principals that were spoken about were those of outlier schools. Like, we have one principal who's leading this India school or the Doon school, or there is some school which is highly transformational, a story to tell. Currently, every principal is being expected to be an innovator. So we need to redefine, we need to reflect the role of the, I'm sorry, is there a sound there? Is the role of the principal from being just an administrator and, person who's managing the resources to somebody who's a thought leader too. Now, first thing is what Mrs. Mukherjee also said, that first is that I believe firmly rooted, I am in this belief that the last mile delivery is the most crucial point. The school exists in the classroom, and an education system is as good as the teacher in the classroom. If you have a joyous teacher, you have joyful learning. If you have an innovative teacher, you have an innovative system. And the second most important factor, I strongly believe, is the school leadership. It is the sensibilities through personal experience, through working under different leaders. It is the sensibilities of the principal that percolate down to the culture of the school. And as is the culture of the school, the student learning outcome depends hugely on that. And that makes the case for the 50 hours of the professional development that they have spoken about. So much depends on the vision of the principal. Like if a principal believes in teacher empowerment, if the teacher feels supported by the principal, it travels into the classroom, it travels to the student to become the learning outcome. In our school, for example, I can give an example of my school. There is a huge amount of emphasis on being positive, on affirmative communication, on humanism. And that is there in every policy of the school, in every decision that we take of the school. And that goes and travels into the classroom. And hence, I feel it also becomes the learning outcome. How much buy-in there is from the teachers? I'm talking about responsive leadership. What is the vision of the principal? If it is a shared vision with the teachers,
yes,
there's buy-in from the teachers. I'm sorry?
Yeah, we'll be coming to that section.
Yeah.
And,
so learning out, yeah. So indirectly, the principal affects the learning outcome in many, many ways.
Great, great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Really evolved thoughts. And actually, you've touched upon that the leadership all begins at the grassroots level, and teacher is at the hem of the teaching and learning process. Now moving on to our next segment, where each of you will be answering 2 questions. In round 1, there is 1 question. Round 2, there is 1 question. And expected time is about 2 to 3 minutes. My first question is to Miss Irina Mukherjee. So, Irina ma'am, we see that every school principal has his own, personal values. They have their own beliefs. And the beliefs and values could be progressive, traditional, or a blend of that. And various dimensions about, they harbor various dimensions about, the whole education system, which in turn somewhere influences the leader's personal vision and his ability to translate school's vision and practice. My question is that, number 1, each leader should adhere to his own personal values and beliefs and create that culture. There is nothing wrong in that as well. Or how can he create a shared culture and ethos in the whole system of education? Can you please suggest some ways to this? his personal ideology and values and beliefs, along with the shared culture that he can create in school. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, to drive the system in the required direction, a leader definitely should be able to adapt to the changes in the environment. So adaptability is something, it's a quality that is crucial for growth. And we all know that it has been talked about very often that, change is inevitable. And especially now in the 21st century. So a leader should be able to keep pace with the changes, with determination and grit. And I would like to quote the famous American author John Maxwell, who once said that a leader knows the way, shows the way, and goes the way. So I would say that, yes.
Because we see that leaders personal vision, beliefs, they are reflective on the teaching, learning, the designing of the curriculum, professional development of the educators. So it becomes very important, I think, for the leader to align his own personal beliefs with the shared beliefs of the all the stakeholders, and take the whole team forward, move forward in this development of, and that is what I think is leading learning all about. Thank you
Right.
so much, Irina ma'am. Moving on to Dr. Shankar, my question to you is about that goal setting has always been talked about in terms of careers, lives goal setting. Parallelly, every school has a vision and a mission. Now, setting SMART goals is a means by which actions and practices are articulated, fine tuned, good practices are nurtured. So, one, how important is goal setting for a school? And two, if you could also suggest us some of the goals that a school can probably set in year one, year two, how and what will be the parameters of these goals, and how would the school be able to accomplish them so that they can bring their vision and mission in reality. Yes, sir.
Excellent. Thank you, ma'am. In principle, I would believe that the very purpose of education is not just adding to the intellect, but also expanding the hearts and the larger personality and attributes that go with that. And therefore, it's very important that as an institution, we try to ensure that each student is uniquely and differently talented. They have a different bundle of attributes, skills, and potentials that we only become facilitators and enable them to really, sharpen their skills in their own fields of strength. And therefore, it's very important to set the goals to help achieve this diverse range of development. Even within a classroom, in a class of 60, you will need to set 60 goals, one goal for each student. You cannot have one goal for the entire class. And therefore, that's a huge responsibility and a leadership skill of the principal involved. I would say that we have to keep the larger national interest, the big policies that we have been hearing, the recent past, Atmanirbhar Bharat, the Skill India, the Make in India, all that. And beyond that, I think we should, as an institution, we should also ensure that the students are conscious about equilibrium, sustaining equilibrium with nature, with the community, with the nation, and humanity in large. If one defines in brief about SMART goals, you can take it, for example, that you have to have very specific goals for each student. I would say specific strengths for each student will define that goal. The goals have to be measurable because within the short duration, they graduate or pass out from that schooling, they have to realize those accepted outcomes. And therefore, we have to create those opportunities and platforms. And I would say measurable managers. So it's very important to manage not only the external world, but more importantly, manage oneself from deep within. A very high level of emotional intelligence is perhaps required. I would say A is for achievable task, achievable with a good attitude, because attitude is all that matters. We have been listening to other panelists stressing on that. I don't have to add more. How the values, as mentioned by our other panelists, Irene and Chalesh, Bhandari, on being positive, being passionate, and being righteous, they are perhaps the most important values to make a world of difference. R is for making relevant. What is the most relevant? With responsibility. And as I said, responsibility to oneself, to the community, to the nation, and humanity in large. And most important, to make those goals time-bound. We have to achieve that within those time periods, and to add to that, tranquility, because education is perhaps the best way to bring in inclusivity and to eradicate some of the social inequalities that exist across the globe. So it's very important that we set and create these goals and provide a platform for each student to nurture their own paths. We should not have a singular product outcome from each class, but rather we should enable each student to nurture and progress on their own goals and the vision they have for themselves to contribute to this larger achievements. Thank you.
Great, very well said, sir. And what struck me most was for each principal to design goals, but have not just one goal for the entire, and to give each student his own goal and help him nurture that goal in the specific parameters of them being achievable and time bound, and then so the bottom line of your conversation was to give each student his own goal and help him nurture that. Very quickly, I'll just ask in 30 seconds to Miss Irina Mukherjee and Miss Chalesh Bhandari, what would be your 3 goals if you would want to have that for your school? 3 SMART goals for your school. Yes, Irina, ma'am.
Yes, for me, it would be how to learn and to adapt and to work in teams. So these would be my 3 goals for my students.
Great, thank you so much. And Chalesh ma'am, yes, your 3 goals for your vision of a smart school.
Chalesh ma'am, you're on mute. Please.
I'm sorry. My first goal would be that the child comes happily to school, feeling cherished, safe, and secure, and wants to come to school every day. The day I have that school, that would be the major goal achieved. The second would be the well-being of a child who's ready to be a learner and a lifelong learner. the child imbued with a sense of wonder, the child having a sense of curiosity, so that through their life, it carries with them, the spirit of learning. And we have a winner all the way. And the third goal would be that every child set her own benchmark. Every child comes to the benchmark she or he sets for herself, irrespective of what is the peer pressure, what does the society expect out of her or him, but I come to my best potential.
Very well said, ma'am. Excellent. Very well said. So every child should have his own personal, go beyond his personal limitations. Very well. Coming back to you, Chalesh ma'am, and that was the reason I said don't spill the beans, because the question that's why the question was related, and so I wanted you to hold on to that. So the question for you is that the National Education Policy 2020 directs the school principals and, of course, educators a must undergo of 50 hours of continuous professional development opportunities every year to keep themselves attending workshops or online leadership development modules. Now, I mean, who else than you know the best school structure and till now how the workshops and these continuous professional development programs have been taking place till now. Now, with the emphasis on a 50-hour program, how do you think school will be able to not just support it, but also integrate it? Because there'll always be a situation where the classes would not be left empty, where there are other things which take a prior importance. So all ears to you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So I would go if with the fact that if the NEP has to succeed, we need at least 50 hours. I'm being disruptive by saying that the principal has to leave office and to step out. But that is mandatory if NEP has to become effective, because the principal is the one who's going to steer it at the end of the day. All right, so we already are in the conversation about getting out of administration and management, about budgeting and all. The first step was becoming a pedagogical leader, and now it's an innovator, a visionary. The principal has to be keeping abreast with all the global practices. What is the data available? What is the latest innovation that is there? So I think it is imperative that a school leader steps out and undergoes that 50 hours. Now let us redefine this CPD also. Is it only about workshops? Is it, what else is there in CPD? How can a principal or a school leader grow continuously? One way is a short-term course. And we are in the middle of the digital revolution, the fourth revolution or whatever they call it. So it's not such a challenge anymore. So the principal doesn't have to go far or to leave administrative work to be able to do it. There are online courses. There are experts sitting out there. The second way of CPD is what we do in Delhi also. We have peer mentoring. We have the Sahodais. So it's not only a workshop that will empower you, that will give you professional development. There is peer mentoring. There are senior principals sitting out there who are ready to mentor you, who are ready to add value to your professional development. So that peer mentoring, being part of the Sahodais, being part of principal groups who will support you, that also is professional development. Professional development also comes from the feedback you get, from being inside the system. All right, the feedback that your teachers provide you, because it's a, what shall I say, it's a collective intellectual bank that you have in school. So the principal can do it. And of course we have after school time. I have not thought of it ever as a challenge, because it is such a priority that when you put it as a priority, the structure builds around it. It has to be around the duties, it has to be embedded in the duties and the growth of a principal. and then it happens. And principals are doing it. See, it's become a mainstream conversation now. The Delhi government is sending its principals out. I mean, for professional development, whether it's visiting other schools or visiting other countries, it's that much a priority. And when it is a priority, the structure will grow around it. If CEOs everywhere can go in for part-time courses, why not the principals?
Very
That
well
is.
said, ma'am. Thank you so much, because yes, principals now have to move out. I think very revolutionary and ideal thought that they have to go beyond. If they have to go beyond the managing and administrative roles and become the thought leaders, then that also requires them to go beyond and work towards their own development, which may not just happen, very rightly, through workshops, but by mentoring others, you yourself get evolved.
Yeah.
So moving on to Irina, ma'am, there's a very related question to you here. Now, you know that all the documents, whether it is the Kothari Commission of 1966 and National Education Policy, or the policy before this, they all talk about that of all the different factors that influence the quality of education and its contribution to national development is the critical role of the educator. And so it also then requires to empower, put a lot of emphasis, the national education policy throws a lot of emphasis on empowering the educators. Now, taking the conversation ahead from where Ms. Chalesh left, I would want you to identify some of the challenges in the teacher empowerment and also suggest how you would, combat these challenges and create a model for your teacher empowerment. What will be your teacher empowerment strategy in your school? Yes.
Right. Mrs. Kapoor, obviously, undoubtedly quality, competence, and character of teachers are important for students as they look up to their teachers as their idols. I will break up the question into two parts. So how do I develop competent learners? So, in today's world, I think a teacher's role is very different from what it was when we were growing up. The shift now is from cognitive to developing social skills as well. And we know that the jobs of today may not even be available in the future. So the teacher of today has a very vital role to play. In fact, the teacher of today has to be more of a change agent. It is therefore vital that teachers, they need to be empowered. We have to provide them with the necessary tools, resources, lot of professional development has to happen in order that they do their jobs well. So as a leader, it is very important to put in place a comprehensive and a continuous teacher training program for the teachers. And as far as ethics are concerned, the teacher definitely has a major role to play, to bring about the desired changes in the behavior of the learners. So if a teacher treats the learners with care, love, affection, commitment, then these are definitely the prime duty of a teacher. And the teacher. Yes.
Yes, please continue. Please continue. Yeah. Please continue.
Yeah. So basically, if the school leader encourages the teachers, then and brings out the latent leadership skills of the teachers, then it would create a spirit of positivity in the school, and that is what one needs for for the right kind of environment in a school.
So what would be those two challenges that you would have while designing a teacher empowerment schedule for your school? Very quickly, two
well,
challenges.
the challenges, it could be, the time is definitely would be a challenge, because yes, the curriculum is there to be completed, so that would be a challenge. Also, we could have, there has to be a program which would be suited for all teachers, so that the interest is there. So that could also be a challenge. But these are minor things, when the vision is there, when we all want to achieve the goals, which are so wonderful, that have been set up by these the NEP. So I think all these are very, very minor things, and they should not be hurdles. In fact, we can always overcome these challenges.
So great. With this, wishing you a lot of, good wishes to create a system and take the baton of teacher empowerment forward, because that is actually the need of the hour. And honestly, that's the biggest challenge. And I'm very happy to hear you all principals when they say, no, this is just a minor challenge, because the biggest challenge, which when I was a principal, I used to feel that, okay, these workshops have come from CBSE, now how to send my teachers and how the classes will remain empty. So it's so good that principals are thinking on these lines, that yes, there is a need, they need to be empowered so that they bring back, they become leading learners. And great, thank you so much, ma'am. Over to Dr. Shankar. Yes, Dr. Shankar. So a related question to you, that we have been talking about teacher empowerment and the teacher being at the hem of the teaching learning process, and how important is for the whole student learning outcome for the teachers to be well equipped and well empowered. But we have also seen during pandemic the kind of robust and leadership role that the educators had played all this way. So what, according to you, are key leadership qualities vital to the success as an educator? And because I'm very impressed with the analysis that you draw and the parallels that you draw, so I was very motivated and tempted to have some qualities which you could analyze and then dish it out to all of us. Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. I think this pandemic has taught each of us several lessons. And the most important aspect is every leader, every stakeholder has risen to this challenge, has been very adaptive. And I think that's one of the most important realization of this pandemic. But for the collective participation, collective responsibility shown by all the stakeholders, we would not have been able to deliver with success over the last about a year now. I think we should appreciate here all the school principals, all the teachers, all the educational institutions for the wonderful service that they have been able to provide, and to embrace technology in a very seamless and very effective way to reach out to the students. And therefore, it's very important to realize that the future is going to be witnessing a greater acceleration to a technology embraced planet, whether it be in the educational industry or service industry or whatever. And therefore preparing both the teachers and students to accept this rapidly growing technological changes is going to be one of the keys to success. I'd just like to end by quoting Swami Vivekananda. Education is not a mere forcing of information into one's mind and leaving it undigested there for the rest of the lifetime. It's about building characters. It's about man-making, woman-making. It's about assimilation of ideas. So wonderfully said by Swami Vivekananda. And I think this is perhaps the right time for all of us to raise up and make bigger contributions to nation building. It's a wonderful opportunity for all of us as teachers to involve ourselves and make larger contributions in this nation building exercise. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Very well summed up in the end, and that teachers, that creating leading learning process, which is a duty of all the stakeholders, and creating a school culture which resonates with learning, creating lifelong learners with ethics, accountability. I think that is what Vivekananda meant when he spoke these words, and he wanted that the learning should not be restricted to as an instrument for the attainment of a goal, which is probably attainment of a job or a position, lifelong, but creating individuals who are lifelong learners. So coming to the one of our last questions, and to Ms. Chalesh Bhandari, and ma'am, I would just want to ask that there is a lot of buzz about from school effectiveness to school improvement. If you want to have a true student learning happening and creating a culture of student learning, then there is a shift from, school effectiveness to school improvements. If you could very hurriedly sum it up in 4 to 5 pointers, that how school leaders can, bring up this shift from school effectiveness to school improvement.
So I think school effectiveness to school improvement is a process of unlearning and then relearning. We have been following practices and mindsets for a very long time. Like, all of us are at least a couple of decades into this business already by the time we become principals. So it's very important that we unlearn pretty much of what we have learned along the way and relearn. Only then there will be improvement. One of the ways is to the leadership, as I have seen from the nature of the comments that have come up also. School leadership has been very top down. All right. So if we have to go for school improvement, I think we need a bigger intellectual think tank. We need to bring in the intellectual resources of the teachers. We need to give greater autonomy so that more and fresh ideas come in. Only then there will be improvement. Otherwise, we will be stuck in that rut of reaching the goals that we defined. Like, what Dr. Shankar also mentioned, that, we defined that this is what the school goal should be. And improvement would be we take it down to the individual level. So one of the ways that I can think of is to distribute the decision-making process to make it more let's say, federal in nature. The second thing about school improvement would be to have a vision forward, a kind of timeline, like where do we want to see the school so many years from now? The third thing is to make the structures more malleable so that there is space to include improvement. If the structures are really very rigid, then there isn't too much improvement taking place. So there should be space, interstitial space, and malleability and flexibility, so that we review and redefine every now and then, because we are dealing with changing sensibilities. We are dealing with changing cultures. We are the technological revolution has come in and so on. So there should be space in the school system to kind of redefine and re-evolve.
And do you think this, how well this, because it's such an interesting piece of thought that you have shared, and I want to just take it further, that you did talk about creating think tanks and providing that kind of greater autonomy, and creating structures which are malleable and flexible. Now, considering the way schools function, there is a lot of rigid structures of and lot of compulsions of time of finishing the syllabus. Then there is a lot of rigor of various activities and various things that keep taking in the school activities. How do you think these ideals which you are talking about in the current Indian context, how could they be, integrated? If you could just give a live example of what all ideas you've said that we could integrate, you can take a, thought on it, and how can we integrate to the current scenario?
The fact that now what I'm talking about is not really new. Now the CBSE is talking about the fact that we are doing art integration. Now we've given so many and joyous learning. Now we have to teach a particular topic in history, right? Now we've given the teacher so much space as to how the teacher can teach it. That is where the autonomy has come in. Now we are not bound to the NCERT. We have multiple assessments, Mrs. Kapoor, in class 10. Now it's really up to me how I want to assess my child. Would I have the child draw out something for me to draw? Would I'll be okay with it if I gave the child the option of, would you like to tell me the answer in the form of a mind map, or would you like to write it down? There, I've given the autonomy to the teacher. Now you figure out and tell us how you would like to. I'll be quite okay if you want to do Kabir ke Dohe, not just as a recitation, but could you play it on your desk and say Kabir ke Dohe? I've given the autonomy to the teacher. So I think CBSE has also, it would be so patronizing if I said that, but really things have come of age. And the NEP has given us the wings, and CBSE has given us the wings by bringing in, art into it and drawing into it and so much more. So that is where the space is coming in. The history teacher has 10 tools in her hand now to be able to assess a child. We are going in for oral tests. Who heard of oral tests? Vivas were only for practicals. This time we are telling the child, you don't want to write? Go ahead, tell us orally. As long as you learn, we are good. So that is what I'm talking about, ma'am.
Yeah, so very nice. This is, yes, this is possible in a scenario like liberal arts. And very quickly, I will jump onto, because I don't want to leave it, because so many of the, teachers and principals, they'll be listening to this conversation. And I want Dr. Shankar to also comment and draw such parallels for science, technology, for and mathematics. How can flexibility be provided and integration of various, because at the end of the day, you can't integrate a music when you have to work on, some kind of innovation. How will that flexibility come when we talk about science and maths? Yes, sir.
Well, if you look at it in the very fundamental aspect, arts, science, technology, they are also intricately connected. Our neurals very much process all these aspects in a very interrelated way. It is our human limitation that we try to compartmentalize them, right? And therefore, we don't see the outcomes that probably one would like to see. Chalesh, madam was talking about teaching literature with a blend of music and arts and whatever. Same thing can happen in high-end technology. If you have to promote a lifelong learning, a deviation from the rote learning concepts that have been in practice for long, it's very important to embrace people have to enjoy the way they enjoy arts or music in their science classes, in their social economics classes. And that's how you build passion into their futuristic goals. So this idea of integration is not just to provide a very holistic learning, but that's how a human mind processes data. That's how it actually, it translates all these wonderful things and brings in creativity. When you integrate science with arts and culture, you could see that creativity is at its best. And this is, there are world over, there are examples that one could quote that that's perhaps the best way to get the best outcome from one's mind. So I think there'll be very interesting outcomes from this once practiced, very holistic education. And I'm sure in a few years we will see very good outcomes from here. Okay.
Yes, I'm sure, and I'm sure our listeners and viewers will also take lessons from this conversation and not compartmentalize their assessment to, restrict their assessment to subject specific, and try to create such assessment processes which are truly multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary in nature and integrated. And thank you so much. We come to the end of the session, and I think we had some very rich conversation, starting from where we discussed the changing role of the principal, which has shifted from one of merely being an administrator and a manager to leading the school process for ensuring student learning happens to its fullest through taking initiatives and risks, through thinking out of the box and creating a culture of change, motivating the staff, empowering their staff. We also discussed about teachers leading by example, and how teachers act, speak, behave, lead their students through challenging times, and lead by examples, and how teachers enough space and empowerment has to be given to the educators to bring in a shift in the whole system of education and make it more progressive. Thank you very much. And we are very obliged and honored to had you people here. And it was a wonderful conversation, very rich discussion. And once again, thank you very much from Edudevs School of Inspired Teaching and Learning and Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham. Over to you, Meenu ma'am.
You are muted, Meenu ma'am.
I'm so sorry. This was indeed a very, very rich discussion. And we have two questions from the audience. If, of course, ma'am, Devyani ma'am did wind up, but...
Oh, no, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
I thought that it would be really adding on to the rich content of the discussion. For the panelists, is it possible to encourage bottom-up approach rather than top-down approach for learning? Is a question put forth by Mr. Arun. Would anyone like to answer?
So maybe I think
can-
Dr. Shankar could take this up.
I can just make a small statement here. When it comes to building the vision, I think it's not about top-down approach or bottom-up approach. It's about keeping the right equilibrium. When it's about assimilation of good ideas, ultimately it's the teachers who are interacting in the classroom, as the other panelists have said. It's about the entire school in a class, and we have been talking about giving a specific goal to each student, and therefore it's only right that the vision building contribution also comes from the teachers upwards, and there has to be that right equilibrium to sustain very collective growth. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Shankar. And yet another question from Mr. Arun. Is it possible to encourage teachers to develop their own teacher training program?
This is innovative disruption. Wonderful. This is innovative disruption. Why didn't we think of it? Thank you, Arun. This is
a wonderful question. Yeah, ma'am. If you say, then I have a few words to say. Please go ahead, ma'am.
No, I can just applaud the idea, because it should come from where it's like, when we walk into a class, the thing is that I was told once in a maths workshop that please don't teach maths, teach the child. All right. So it's the same thing. Thank you, Arun sir, for telling us we don't have to, we don't have to have a module ready and then force it. We need to know what are the tools that the teacher requires, and then equip the teacher with the tools so they define and they express what is it that their curriculum should be, what is it that they need to know. And then the best practices come together and we put together a module. I mean, I'm loving this idea and would love to take this forward. The teachers put in their best practices. That's what we do. And then come up with something fantastic. But who's going to teach the teachers? The teachers are going to teach themselves.
Well said. So what happens is, I want to just extend Ms. Bhandari's thoughts that when teachers, are having completed with their degrees, they hurriedly get into the class without, it's actually there their journey begins. It's actually there they experience what is teaching, learning. And I strongly recommend educators to come up with their own philosophy and ideology, their own teaching ideology and philosophy, and for some time set aside these jargons that we keep using about, and I think in the rut of using these jargons, we somewhere forget. We are so wrapped up in curriculum, pedagogy, structure, so we lose the flavor of and beauty of teaching learning process. And Mr. Arun, this is a very, very revolutionary thought. And honestly, this is very close to my heart. If you see some of the quotes which I put and some of my thoughts which I put on the social media, I always encourage educators to develop their own teaching philosophy and ideology. And yes, you can be in structure, but you can have your own ways and developing your ideologies. Why not? A teacher is most empowered in her classroom, and the only thing required is understanding and compassion from the heads, the leaders of the institution, who need to encourage these kinds of innovations and developments.
Yeah, and this has been happening, Mrs. Kapoor. I mean, throughout, all teachers, I think they innovate all the time, and no two classes are ever the same. Even if you're going to two sections of the same class, you will always see that the teacher innovates differently, tackles the questions differently, tackles the students differently. So the teachers are innovating. It is just that now we are putting these things on paper. But I think the teachers have been doing this throughout. So it's not something that has just come up. I think you just need to give them that freedom. And so that's the reason the vision of the management is very important. If the management is gives the teachers the freedom, they will automatically, be able to experiment and grow. And that is how the students also they grow along with the teachers. So that's my thought on this.
Absolutely. I think that is what a school leader is directly, how he is directly responsible to leading learning is by creating a conducive environment where innovation and learning happens without restriction, without constraints. And I'm sure both you, ma'am, and sir resonate this thought. And yes. Next question.
I think that was all from the audience. Thank you so much, dear panelists.
Thank you.
On behalf of Edudevs as well as Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham, thank you all for making this discussion an enriching moment for all of us, and we stand to gain from your insights. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
It's been wonderful being in this panel and listening to all the experts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.